Okay, so in the today's session, we will continue with the topic which we stopped in the last session. In the last session, we started with the discussion of object-oriented programming in Python, and today we will be continuing with that. And for that, we started with this: how to define a class, what is class, how to define the, how to initialize the object, then what are the methods, how to have a method in the class, and so on. So we started with this discussion, and I'm sure that you already know what do you mean by object-oriented programming. What is a class? What is object? What is a constructor? What are the different important concepts of object-oriented programming? So I hope that you people already know all those things since you have already studied it. So what we'll be doing, as we discussed in the last session, there are a few differences when we have a look about object-oriented programming in Python and object-oriented programming in other languages like C++ and Java. So there are basic differences that we need to understand. Otherwise, it's more or less same. So if you see in Python, we have a syntax of defining the class like this: a class keyword space and then the name of a class and then colon. Okay, and then after that we have this variables. Now the variables which we initialize or which we define immediately after the class start of block. So those variables are called as class variables. Now you need to understand that in Python object-oriented programming, you have two type of things. One is your instance variable and another one is your class variable. Okay. Now for your instance variable, your instance variables have their own copy for each and every object, for each and every instance. But your class variable has a shared copy for all the objects or for all the instances of that specific class. Okay. So what does it mean that when you have number of courses as a class variable and credits as a class variable? So by default, for all the objects of the class student, these two variables will be shared. Okay, so all the objects will be having same copy for these two variables, and for instance variable, each and every object will be having its own copy. So every object of a class student will be having its own copy of roll number, will be having its own copy of name, will be having its own copy of address, and will be having its own copy of mobile. Okay, then this instance variable need not be defined here, because the moment if you define here inside the class, they immediately becomes a class variables. So where do we define them? We define them inside the function or inside the class method or inside the class function, you can say. So for example, this setVal is a function of a class, then getVal is a function of a class. So here we are defining, or here we are initializing the variables, and all these variables are called as instance variables. Now if you see here, all these functions, the functions of a class, so this functions has first argument which is called as self. Now you can call it anything, whatever you want to, myself, yourself, self, or simply self. But tradition is to call this argument as a self. Now what is this self? This is something like your this keyword of Java programming language. Okay, so self is a keyword, you can say, or self is a argument which implicitly refers to the object which has called this function. I repeat, self is an argument which implicitly refers the method invoking object or the object which has invoked or which has called this method, this function. Okay. And since this is implicit, so you need not have to pass it. For example, if I want to call the function setVal, what I will be doing, I will be having the object of the class student, and using that object will be calling the function. For example, S1 is an object of a class student. So I will be calling this function by writing S1 dot setVal. So the moment I write S1 dot setVal, S1 object is implicitly passed, and this self will be referring to that object. Fine. And then we have explicit arguments, which are roll number, name, address, and mobile. So we are passing 4 explicit arguments to this function, and then inside the function we are setting the values, or we are setting the properties of the object. So we are writing, whenever you need to access the instance variable, you need to write like this only: self dot variable name, self dot variable name. So self dot roll number equals to this roll number, self dot name equals to this name, and then self dot address equals to this address, self dot mobile equals to this mobile. Okay. So now in this function we have initialized 4 variables or 4 instance variables. Okay. So this class student has got 4 instance variables: roll number, name, address, mobile. Then we have another function called getVal. So getting the values or getting the properties. What we are doing, we are only having one implicit argument to this, that is self. And then here we are printing the address of this self. So we are printing the address of the object which is calling this function indirectly. Then we are returning what? We are returning the values or the properties of that object. So return self dot roll number, return self dot name, return self dot number 4 says self dot credit, self dot mobile. Now if you see here, so what we are doing, we are returning 4 different values. And we have already discussed that in Python, a function can return multiple values. And that's what we are doing over here. So return self dot roll number, comma, self dot name, comma, self dot number of courses, comma, self dot credits, comma, self dot mobile. Now out of this variables, we can see very clearly roll number, name, and mobile. These are instance variable, but number of courses and credits, these are the class variables. Okay, so these values 5 and 25 will be displayed over there or will be returned over there. Fine. Then you have some class methods. Now what we'll be doing, we'll simply better if I do it here. I will be declaring one object, say s equals to student, a student object, and then I would set the values of the student object by writing h dot setVal, and then here we'll be passing 4 things. First is the roll number, say in single quotes when I'm putting the roll number, so I need to say it's a string roll. So 19CO, say 10. Then the second one is name. So sorry, say Wasim, something like that. Then comes the address, so I say Panvel. And then comes the mobile number. So I put its number and say 9898929292, something like this. So I have set the values, and now I would just try to print the values. So here I would be calling the getVal function, because getVal is returning the values, so we need to print those values. Okay. So now what we are doing, we are declaring one object of a student class, so s equals to student, and then we are setting the values for this object s dot setVal. Now if you see carefully, so what we are doing, we are passing 4 arguments: 1, 2, 3, 4, and this setVal is accepting 5 arguments: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But already we have discussed that the first argument is an implicit. So whichever object is calling this function, that object reference will be there in this self. Okay. And here if we see, so we are making use of s dot setVal. So s is an object which is calling the function setVal, and so this self word, or you can say keyword, self keyword is referring to this object s. Fine. And then this is the first explicit argument, that is roll number. This is the second explicit argument, name. This is the third one, address, and this is the fourth one, mobile number. And then we are simply then printing and calling the function getVal and making use of the same object as s dot getVal. And what we are doing into getVal, we are not passing any argument to this, only one argument, which is the function invoking object. So this is implicit, and here the first thing we are doing is we are displaying the address of that object. So self is that ID of self, and then we are returning the different values, that is roll number, name, number of courses, credit, and mobile number. So let's see what output do we get. Let me save this code. Let me execute it. Self is not defined by this kind of values. Okay. So here is the output. Self is at this address. So the object S is present at this address, and then the values. Okay. The first is the roll number. We are simply writing print. If you see this, what we have done. Print S dot get well. So it is returning these values in the form of tuple. So 19CO10, that is the roll number. Then Ansari Wasim is the name. And then 5 is the number of courses, 25 is the credits, and this is the mobile number. Okay. Then if I want to change the number of courses or the credits, so I can change it since they are class variables. So what I need to do, I need to have a class method. Please see here carefully. Any issue so far? Any query so far from your side? Let me. My screen is visible to all. I stopped the presentation and then I have restarted the presentation. Okay, thank you. So what we'll be doing now, we want to change the content of the class variable. Now, the simple way of changing or updating the class variables is through a function or through a method. And the method which updates the class variables are called the class methods. Okay. Now, whenever you want to define a class method, those class methods are followed by a decorator called class method. Okay. Decorators are special words in Python which are preceded by this at the rate sign or at the rate symbol. Okay. So after at the rate, whatever comes is called as a decorator. I repeat, after at the rate, whatever comes is called as decorator. Now, if I want to define a class method, those class method must be followed by a decorator class method. Okay, and for every class method, you need to have a decorator class method. So this is some sort of indication to the interpreter also and to all the other programmers who refer a program that this method is a class method. Fine. So now set courses is a decorator method, or you can say a class method. And what we are doing, see, defining the function is same, def keyword, def keyword. Now this is the name of my function or name of my method. And here the first argument is an implicit argument. And this argument, the way self refers to the function invoking object, in the same way, this CLS is a word or a keyword which refers to the method invoking class. I repeat, method invoking class, because this is a class method. So to invoke this method, you need to make use of a class name and not the object name. So we'll be invoking this object, we'll be invoking this function, or we'll be calling this function by writing student dot set courses. Likewise, student dot set credits, and not with the help of object, because these are class method. So CLS, which can be CLS, my CLS, your CLS, this name can be anything. But we are following the convention, and the convention says that it should CLS. So we are writing it CLS. So this is the implicit which refers to the class name, right? And then what we are doing, we are passing one more argument to set the number of courses. So we are simply saying CLS dot number of courses equals to n. Likewise, for setting the credits, here also CLS dot credits equals to C. So these are called the class methods. Now by making use of this class method, I can update my class variables, number of courses and credits. So let's try to update number of courses. Now what happened when I executed this code, I got the default values. So we got the default value of number of courses and credits, 5 and 25. Now we will try to first change the number of courses, and again we'll display the content. So let me say student, the name of my class, dot, I want to set the courses. So set courses, this is my class method, and I will be passing the value. Suppose I want to say now the number of courses is 7. So I'm passing 7. And after this, I will be doing this again. So see, self is at this address, and then the values, first values, roll number, name, number of courses 5, credits 25, and mobile number. Then self is at the same address because it is the same object. Then roll number is same, name is same, but now the courses, number of courses are 7. Credits we haven't changed, so credit is still 25. What if I try to change this courses with the help of, say, the object, instead of making use of a class name? If I try to write like this, s dot set courses, s is the object of my class. So I try to call the function set courses using the object s. Let's try to do that. Let's see what happens. So it has been changed. It has been changed. Let me save it once again. Okay, so it is changing. So we can see it is changing. Okay. Now let's do one more thing. Let's go for one more object. Say s1 equals to student. Again. Let's set the values. S1 dot set well. And this is suppose 20, and this is say Ansari or seen. Okay. Let me print the values. Print s1 dot get well. Let's try to execute our code. So what's happening here? So you got the first object s, again the first object s, and then this is another object s1, and this is a different address if you see, and then you got the roll number different one, and then the name different one, but the number of courses is 7. So the courses modified over here is getting reflected over here also. Okay, because a same copy has been shared. Now let us try to change the credits using the object s1. So s1 dot set credits, and let me make it 30, and then let's display both the objects. So if you see here what we have done, after this 25, we have changed the number of credits, and then we have displayed the first object. So the first object got displayed with the number of credits as 30, and then we are displaying the second object. So second object is also displayed with the number of credits as 30. So this is the basic difference between an instance variable and a class variable. You can modify the class variable with the help of class methods. You can call the class method using the class name. You can call the class method using the object name. So all those things we can do. And then after this class method, we have one more method called a static method. Now, static method in Python object-oriented programming. So, what this has to do, basically, your regular methods of a class, they update the instance variable, so they work on the instance variable. The class methods works on the class variables, and static methods are the methods which basically adds on some functionality to your class without updating your class variable or your instance variable. So basically, they do not play or they do not generally update your class variable or the instance variable. But the static methods are the methods which are just associated with your class to add on some functionality to your class without affecting, I repeat, without affecting the variables of a class. So generally they do not update your class variable or your instance variable, but they add on some functionality to your class. For example, here one of the functionality to this class student. This is a class student. So it is you can say it is consisting of the student's information, and it is consisting of all the operations that can be performed on a student. Okay, so properties and methods of a student, or properties and behavior of a student, in short. Now in this properties and behavior of a student, you can have one more additional functionality. For example, you want to check whether which day is a working day for a student. Now when you talk about this kind of functionality in a student class, whether the current day or whether a given day is a working day or not. So basically, this kind of functionality do not update any student property, whether that property is a class variable or whether that property is a instance variable. That's not that much important. But this function is not going to update any property. Instead, it is going to only provide one additional feature. Okay, and that's what is being done with the help of static methods in Python object-oriented programming. Please keep this in your mind very clearly. So static methods are generally used to add an additional functionality to your class without altering or without updating the instance variables or class variables of a class. Okay. Now what we are doing? So we are having a decorator add static method. Whenever you want to define a static method, you need to have a decorator add static method. That's what we are doing over here. And generally, it does not have any implicit argument, and that's the reason. If you see your instance function or your regular function of a class, the first argument is a implicit argument which refers to the object. Okay, if you see your class method, so in the class method also the first argument is an implicit argument which refers to the class or the object. But in case of your static method, you do not have any implicit argument. So whichever argument you have, that's an explicit argument. The reason is what? Because it doesn't update or it doesn't play with your instance variables or the class variables, right? So what we are doing into this method, this is my method is working, which is used to check whether the given day is a working day or not. And what it is accepting? A day. Okay, an argument which is a day. And then with the help of one you can say system function, what we are doing, we are simply checking, we are calling the weekday function of this So if day.weekday equals to 6, we are returning false, else we are returning true. Now, what is this? So if you come back to this part, so I'm importing a module date time, and into this module, I have a class date, you can say. And what we are doing over here, please see carefully. I am declaring an object of that class. So d equals to date time, d equals to date time dot date, and then I am passing a date. Now I am passing today's date. So the how do we pass? It's a year first, then comma, then it's a month, and then comma, and then it's a date. Okay, or day. So three arguments I am passing to this. You can say constructor or this class. So then it returns in the object D, or the object D is created using this date, and then I am simply sending this object D to my is workday function. Now this is workday function is called using the class name. So student dot is workday, and then I am passing this D object. This D object has got its function weekday, which returns whatever is the date into this object. It returns the number value which indicates the weekday of that date. So whatever is the date, so whether the date is of Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday, so that value is returned by this function. Okay, and it starts from 0. I repeat, it starts from 0. So basically, the 6 value stand for Sunday. So from Monday it starts, and it starts from 0. So Monday is 0, Tuesday is 1, Wednesday is 2, Thursday is 3, Friday is 4, Saturday is 5, and so Sunday is 6. So what we are doing into this function, that if the given date falls on Sunday, so it will be 6, and when it is 6, then only we are saying return false, else we are simply saying return true. Okay, so is workday. So if the given date falls on Sunday, so we are returning false, saying that this is not a work day. If it is any other day, then we are returning true, saying that this is a work day. Okay, now what I have done over here, I'm passing today's date. Fine, so let's see what is the output for this. Condition is already there. Okay, so after all those displays, it says is workday, the output is true. Yet it is a workday because it is Friday. Today's date is falling on Friday. So 26 is Friday. Now let's check for the Saturday, that is 27. I change the date as 27. Let me include it. And it says is workday true. Yes, Saturday is also a working day. Then let's go for 28. 28th Feb is falling on Sunday. Now let's see the output, whether this is working day. So we say is work day, so it says false. No, it is not a working day because it is falling on Sunday. Okay, so 28th Feb is falling on Sunday and it's not working day, so the output is false. Fine. Are you getting how we are doing it? So this is your static method which adds functionality to your class, and to call the static method we use the name of a class. So class name dot your static method name, and then whatever argument you want to pass. Any other example of static method for your student class? I mean to say, is there any other functionality or any other feature which you can add into your student class which do not update the property of a student, and still it can act as one feature of a student class? Because if you want to check whether the day is a working day for the student, so this is one of the features of a class, but this feature do not require any updation of the properties of a student. So this feature can be very well implemented with the help of a static method, and that's what we are doing over here. So is there any another example from your side which can act as a static method, and so that we can implement it right now? So please let me know. Chalo. Please think about it. I give you a 1 minute time. Your time starts now, and let me know if there is any feature which can be added to a student class and which does not need modification of its instance or class variables. Chalo, please let me know fast. I'm audible, na? Hello. Am I audible to all? Can anyone reply to me? So please answer my query also. Where are other students? Dikra, Farhan, Rabia, Alfia, Aris. Any feature which can be added to a student class which does not need the modification of its class variable or instance variable. So that can be added as a static method. Just come on, think of this. By the roll number, check whether student is girl or boy. So you need to access. No? Then you need an access of the class student's instance variable. And how come there is any indication in the roll number that is there anything in the roll number which signifies or indicates whether the roll number belongs to a girl or a boy? Yes, Lucky. Okay, come on. Or we can move on to the next topic. Next topic of the same topic. So whether a subtopic. Important one, constructor. What is constructor? At least this you people can easily answer. Yes, what is constructor? Can you please tell me what is constructor in a class? What is the use of a constructor? No answer? You do not know what is a constructor? Constructor is used to initialize the class. Yes. What else? It is used to initialize the class, or it is used to instantiate the class. Used to instantiate the object. So can you swap these words? It is used to initialize the object and it is used to instantiate the class. What do you mean by instantiation of an object? Whether the word instantiation is associated with an object or with a class. You initialize the object or you instantiate the object. And then when you then on the other hand you instantiate the class or initialize the class. Used to initialize the objects, okay? And it is used to instantiate the class. Constructor is invoked when we create a class object. Yes. Do you need to explicitly invoke the constructor, or it is implicitly called? It is implicitly called whenever an object of a class is declared. So whenever an object of a class is declared, that time the constructor of a class is invoked or called. And what is the other point when the constructor is called apart from object declaration? So when you write something like this, S1 equals to student, so a constructor of a student class should be called for the object S1. So apart from this kind of constructor calling points, which is a point, another point when a constructor is called? So please let me know fast. A constructor is automatically called whenever we declare an object like this, S1 equals to student, and then we are passing some values, or we are writing like this, S2 equals to student without any values. So yes, here the constructors are called. Apart from this constructor calling points, is there any other way of calling the constructor implicitly? For example, I got here 4 objects, S1, S2, S3, S4. So S1, S4 equals to student. Here also a constructor is called. Now after this, if I write something like this, say another object Sy equals to say S4, something like this. So at this point, whether the constructor will be called? Yes. Please let me know. The question is whether the constructor is called at this point. Whether constructor is called here. When you write something like this, one object equals to another object, S5, a new object, I am trying to initialize S5 with S4, so S5 equals to S4. So whether constructor will be called here. That's a question. Abhijit says yes, Farhan says yes. What type of constructor will be called here? Can you tell me? There are different types of constructor. Can you tell me what type of constructor will be called here? And I think this is applicable to Java also. Java and even C++. Default constructor. Farhan says default constructor. Any other student? What type of constructor will be called? Please let me know. All are saying default constructor. Okay, there is a link for the attendance and feedback for the today's session in the chat box. Please follow the link. Let me stop the recording. We shall continue the